Hey everybody, it's B here, and today we're coming back with another deck profile of the week, this week being Red Yellow Metacooler. But real quick, do you want to see me pilot this deck live? I'll be live on Twitch at 7 today at 7 Eastern or 4 Pacific. So links will be in the description, but without further ado, let's jump into one of the most hyped decks I've been wanting to play for the longest time, Red Yellow Metacooler. So here's the deck list real quick. So of course, if you guys just care about the deck list, link will be in the description. But this is roughly what we're running, and the red splash is really to bring it all together with the Metacooler core. It's really the best way to be able to get out your boss monster, and it kind of rounds out the deck in being able to provide a little extra defense, especially since anything that we want to play that would be in red only costs one specified red. So even though the deck leans super yellow, primarily yellow, later in the game, it's not the end of the world where if we want to go for a turn 4 play, we can drop one red and then the rest of the game continually charging yellow. So at that end, it's not too crazy to be able to line up depending on the kind of plays we're going for. So first, of course, we're going with the leader. We're going with the reboot leader, where you get to play a Big Eddie Star right at the beginning of the turn. We'll go ahead and see that card right after. However, he has nothing else on his front side, which is really tough, guys. That's super hard. Granted, his awaken is super easy, meaning that a turn 2 awaken is almost guaranteed every single time. When you have 2 or more Frieza clans, which Metacoolers are Frieza clans, you get to draw 2 cards and flip sides. So odds are we're not staying in the side very long at all, at most usually about 1 turn, but it's just something to keep in mind that can really put a stranglehold over what you're trying to do. Then on the front side, anytime you attack, you get to basically burst 3 and then take any Metacooler or Metacooler core that you want, put a bit into your hand. So that's awesome. And then activate main once per turn. If you have 2 or more Frieza clans, you get to rest one of your opponent's cards and keep it rest, which is super sweet. It means you can effectively lock down any threat your opponent has until the rest of the game, as long as they don't deal with your board, which is absolutely huge. And then finally, as a once per turn activate battle, where you get to choose a Metacooler card and give it 5k for the duration of the turn. So this could be a finisher, this could be the leader itself. So there's some flexibility there in terms of what you're able to pick. It's turning your 15ks into 20ks, which is actually pretty relevant when we're considering that, you know, 20k Unisons are really big in this game now. And now having effectively a free way every single turn to deal with 20k Unisons is some nice a little additional advantage that this leader has. Then we're going into Big Eddie, the card that we get out for free. You put down your leader, he comes out right away, and then for 1 you get to switch it in rest mode, mill 1, and then you get to play a Metacooler that costs 2 or less. So this is how we're cheating out tokens. So technically you could just pay 1, get out a Metacooler, then on your turn 2 pay another 1, get out another Metacooler, assuming that you mill 2 of them or you comboed 1 away. So this is one of those ways that for very cheap energy and very quickly you can go off and get those 2 Frieza clans. Then if we look at, you know, what are the Metacoolers? Well, first we're running 7 infinite multiplications. Has a permanent, you can include as many copies of them if you want in the deck. We're leaning on 7. I went with Michael Silk's ratio on this one when I looked at his previous deck to kind of get an idea of where to go with this. And it seems about right with me, where it's enough to make sure you have 1 in hand, that you're able to mill a couple, but you don't want too many of them, right? You want enough to make sure that your go wide strat works really well, but at the same time you want to be able to have other options so that you can actually properly close out the game. For Metacooler Core Ultimate Form, this one's really great. It's probably your best turn 1 play. It comes in, it replaces itself by allowing you to draw a card, and it can actually return a Big Eddie Star in case it died. So in the late game, let's say we got rid of the Big Eddie Star to be able to go into our boss monster, and then that died, we're able to use the Metacooler Core to go ahead and get that back. And he's got a couple activate mains, so for 2 yellow, we can actually pitch him away and our leader can awaken right away. So that's really cool. It gives us an alternate way to awaken if we don't have the cards to be able to play. And then, or you can choose 1 card in your hand, place it in your battle drop area. If you do, you choose 2 infinite multiplication coolers and play them. So effectively, there are 2 ways in which we can just force out the awaken if we don't have the Metacoolers. If we have the Metacoolers and drop, we can just cheat them out into play. So multiple ways on turn 2 to be able to get that awaken, to be able to extend our plays. Then we're running the Metacooler Core Titanic Glare. This is the red one that allows us to go into our boss monster. So we choose a Big Eddie Star in our drop area, place it under, and then the boss monster gets played on top in active mode. This is effectively the only reason we're doing it. It's the best, easiest, quickest way to cheat out our boss monster if on turn 4 that's the play we're trying to go for. But we're not running too much because we are trying to lean super yellow. There are very few benefits in this meta right now to go multicolor, so it's just one of those things to keep in mind. We got a couple of Awakening Core Metacoolers. This one is basically how you close out the game if you go wide. If you're insanely wide and you have a huge board, he has a permanent that gives all your Metacoolers double strike, which is absolutely massive. It's a great way to be able to provide 1,000,000 threats on board He has the additional thing where you can awaken early. We don't really do that part, but I mean, hey, in a really weird world where we wouldn't be able to awaken until we get this out on board, that's an extra option. But effectively, he's just really good at being able to go super wide with all your Metacooler stuff. And then finally, the boss monster, we run a pair of Infinite Force Metacooler Core because Titanic Glare can get it from the deck or hand, and because our leader puts them back into our hand from drop, any Metacooler, mind you. It means that if we mill them out, no big deal, we're able to get it back. It's in the deck. I don't really want to see this in my hand, at least until late game. The only place I really don't want this is in my life, preferably. And odds are I'm going to draw it from my life if there's 2 in there. So activate battle, he gets to place 1 Metacooler from your battle area in the drop area, and then this card gains 5k. Okay, fine, so it's a 30k beater, which is kind of nice. But then the real bonus to this card is that when you play it or when it attacks and there's a big 80 star under it, which we'd likely be doing with our Titanic Glare, you get to choose up to 2 Metacoolers from the drop area and play them. And not just the infinite multiplication Metacoolers, any Metacooler. So now we can start setting up our Awakening Core to give everything double strike. We can set up our Metacooler Core to set up for another boss monster if we really need to. We can go into the 1-drop that then cheats out multiple infinite multiplications. So now that we've milled out our big pieces, we're able to start cheating them out turn after turn after turn and starting to apply a decent amount of pressure. Looking into the defense, we're a yellow deck, so we're going to run Zamasu Sacred Disbelief. I thought about running a split of like 2 of this, 2 draw ones, but 1, we're not totally monocolored. At some point we will charge red, so unfortunately we can't go for like the Krillin. And at this point I kind of figured, why not take the free defensive options? Once we start getting to turn 3, turn 4, that's really when our advantage starts pushing, because our leader doesn't draw on swings ever. So we kind of need to mitigate that early game as best as we can. We're running 4 Vegeta Prideful Transformations. We're running a lot of Unisons in this deck, a lot of early Unisons, which means we're really looking to get as much advantage and extra defense in free counterplays as we can. 2 Flying Nemesis. I mean, Nemesis always and forever will be a good card, so we run them at a couple. And then 4 Topos. We need the red, and this is one of the best ways to get the red. The 4 Titanic Glares is not enough to really guarantee that we're going to have a charge. So again, Topo is another one of those cards where you just need 1 red charge. So for 1 red charge, we're able to have a Topo. It's really helpful in mitigating our opponent's plays and just really setting ourselves up to get into that long game if we need to. Odds are you're not going to do it early game because you want the 2-3 yellows to be able to do things like play out all the cards we're trying to play, but the 1 red charge isn't going to end our entire game plan. Looking into the Unisons, one of the biggest reasons I want to go back to this deck in this meta is because we did get the new Metacooler Core Giant Force. Activate main, you get to turn one of your Metacoolers into a blocker, so that's extra usage in terms of making sure that you're able to last long. For +1, so he's a turn 2, he's a 3 marker Unison at 15k, which is pretty relevant. That's pumping out 15k bodies. Absolutely massive. They're in rest mode, so it sucks, but again, if our opponent doesn't deal with them, eventually we can just give them all double strike, and it's really good at being able to apply pressure, mitigate board. So I really like this early advantage that we're provided. And then has the activate main for -4 and 3 specified X, where you get to rest up to X of your opponent's battle cards. That's pretty huge. I don't think we're very rarely going to play this, but it's one of those things where if Metacooler has just stayed on board the entire game, and now, you know, he's at like 6-7 markers and we're at like 6 or 7 energy, it gives us one of those ways to really help close out the game, given that we've effectively got a free board every single turn. However, we do round it out with 1 Meki Kabura. I think Meki Kabura is too good to not include. I did have him at 2, but I had to cut him out for deck space, but I could definitely see him go up to 2 and maybe cutting 1 infinite multiplication, because now we have this Unison that's giving us extra tokens. A blocker gives us draw, locks down a card, steals a card, which is really good in terms of our opponent playing SCRs. We can swipe their SCR and go for game. So I just like the 1 of as a great way to be able to extend our late game and give us more ways to close out the game. Specifically, if we're talking about closing out the game, we have SS3 Gotenks. Becomes a 5 cost if we have 3 or more at 15Ks in our drop. All our infinite multiplications are 15Ks, so it combos really well with that. We get it out for free. So it's really easy to set up this card. Oh, it's 4 specified cost. All right, so you can cost 4. And again, like I said, super easy in this deck. We're not having any troubles with that. And then if they deal with it, we wipe their board. And we don't mind having nothing because our cards are vanillas anyways. They're just tokens. So at the end of the day, it's super, super strong to be able to do this. But of course, again, we're milling ourselves, we're bursting ourselves. If we're bursting ourselves, that means Fuchsia Mystery is super easy to set up, at which point there's no reason not to play it. So I had a 1 of, another closer, another way to, and Fu is really good when you have a board. He's really good when you already have an established board to be able to close out the game. And because we're doing that for free so often, especially with our leader, then we don't mind being able to do this at all. Looking into the tech cards, we're running 2 Swift Retaliation Coolers. Helps us close out the game. Also has the benefit that against blue, it gives us an actual out against them doing their baby stuff. And that's really key, right? If we're going to negate, bait out their 5-drop, and then we stop their 5-drop play with a 3-drop, absolutely massive. We're running 2 Great Apes, just an additional way to threaten. It's early aggression. It taps down one of our opponent's cards, so it can be played defensively as well. So this is really just to mitigate, you know, a bit of aggro, a bit of defense, gives us some card draw, allows us to deal with Unisons earlier on if they're giving us trouble. Great Apes, we're milling ourselves, guys. We're bursting ourselves. At that point, we might as well just run these. There's no reason not to. The deck doesn't draw, right? We don't draw from our leader aside from a bunch of invocations. So outside of cooler cards, the only cards we're seeing are from our first initial draw turn. We have to mitigate that. Great Apes allow us to do that, especially since they end up in our draw for free. And then finally, a couple of Bergamos. Between the Great Ape Bardox, the Zamasus, the Mechicabra, we have a lot of things that incidentally rest down our opponent's things. So why not extend that defense by being able to play a couple of Bergamos? And that's the deck list. Nothing too crazy, guys. You know, we got some yellow generic good stuff, and we have some ways to be able to benefit from the fact that we're getting tokens every single turn. We're utilizing new Unisons, and we have a multitude of ways to close out the game, and a multitude of things that give us benefits for doing what we're going to do anyways. In between the SCR, in between the boss monster, in between Fu, a lot of free ways to close out the game. Is it excellent? I don't know. But like I said, if you guys want to see me play it, link will be in the Twitch description. I'll be live at 7 if you guys want to see how well we can do with this deck. But what do you guys think about Metacooler? I've always had a super big passion for it. I think it's super sweet, and I'm so excited to finally be able to rep it. That's it though. Before we close off, I do want to give a huge shout out to Marco Subasic, who actually provided me Metacooler so many sets ago. Honestly, during search format, I believe is when I got them. So we got them, and that's how I actually got my hand on Metacoolers, because I couldn't find them anywhere for like the longest time. So the only reason this deck is possible is because of him. So a huge shout out to him. With that said, guys, what do you guys think of Metacooler? Do you guys want to see more archetypes in the future that provide things like Metacooler, where you get to run like, you know, a dozen copies of single card? I think it's like really fun design space to explore. You shouldn't do it too often because then it gets dull, but I think just enough doses makes it super fun. If you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up. Hey, if you dislike it, thumbs down works too. If you guys want to catch more of my videos, we post almost every single day. Then you guys hit that subscribe button, and with that said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Ciao.